Good afternoon or evening, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to another special edition of Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and we're back to talk about the Belarus League with Jonathan Hibberd again. Today we have not only the league to talk about, but also some cup action, you're telling me. Is that right?
Yeah, hi. So, really, there's a bit to say about the league last week. It was a pretty good week, a lot of goals around. So, Slutsk still kind of defying the odds. They are the highest scorers in the league. They're also one of the biggest conceders of goals in the league. So, they're really exciting to watch. And I felt a bit sorry in their game for Belshina, who really, really need the rub of the green. And Slutsk got a winner in the 87th minute. Well, I just figured they're definitely getting a boost from this international profile. Now, supposedly they're even getting extra sponsorship now from a betting company out there and stuff because of the kind of global attention. So you've just got a feeling with the players that it's giving them an extra 10% to know that people are watching around the world. So, fair dues to them. And yeah, so there were no real kind of standout goals, I would say, but games were generally entertaining. But what we're really coming on to, I really want to talk more about the Cup this week, because that really
tell me about the Cup. So now is this something that's similar to like Belarus's version of an FA or US Open Cup?
Yeah, broadly speaking, but I suppose the difference is, and this slightly reminds me of the old format of the League Cup in England, a lot of the games used to be over two legs in the League Cup, and that was a feature of a lot of continental club competitions. I don't know if they still are, but things like the Italian Cup used to be played, all ties were played over two legs, and so on. So Belarus has certain rounds, the quarterfinals and the semi-finals are two-legged. And it just really shows up the complete topsy-turvy nature of the form of the league. Because if you bear in mind, the first leg was 3 weeks ago. And in those games, Dynamo Brest beat Shakhtar comfortably 2-0. And Slavia, who looked really good at that stage, beat Bate 1-0, who looked very poor. This week, 3 weeks fly by, it's totally different. Suddenly, Dynamo Brest look really suspect. I was talking about them being my tip for winning the league. Dynamo Brest suddenly look really poor from looking really quite accomplished, 3-4 weeks ago. Slavia, who were looking good, now in a really poor run of form. Bate, who, looked very disjointed. They look much more fluid now. And so the kind of, I think we've been waiting for a kind of classic game. And the closest we got to it was that Minsk derby that we talked about in the first podcast. But yesterday's, I think, was the most drama we've seen so far. So it was Shakhtar Soligorsk against Dynamo Brest. Dynamo Brest got a 2-0 lead by half-time. So that was 4-0 on aggregate. So that looked all over. Not a chance. So after the break, Shakhtar came out. How often have we seen this team's, a team comes out and thinks, what, we'll take a few risks now. And they got 4 goals back. And in fact, it was only at the very, very end when I think half the people following thought we were going to extra time. And then it turned out that they have the away goals rule for these. So that's the only thing that put a slight downer on it. But it was a really, really good game. It had everything. And
I personally, I like two-legged ties. Personally, I don't think that soccer or football, depending on what you call it, is a sport that should ever be decided by single elimination. I just think that there's too many bad bounces, and I think that second leg really, just gives a better chance of a fair or a true outcome, if you will.
I'd be really, really torn on that to agree with you, because what really most hooked my interest as a young football fan was the FA Cup. And the FA Cup is built around that kind of one-off shock, anything could happen. But I pretty much agree that not every competition should be done that way. I think the FA Cup's unique. But,
yeah, I mean, a cup competition, that might be one thing. I guess I'm just still bitter about how the leagues do it over here. I don't think a league championship should ever be decided by single elimination.
No. And there are some leagues, they do this thing where they have a sort of first 2/3 of the season, and then the league kind of divides up with round robin games and stuff, and it's really not good at all. But it was another nice thing about the way the League Cup used to be in England, that it was actually, because it was 2-leg ties, it was a different type of competition to the FA Cup, whereas now it's just a kind of second FA Cup and we don't really need it. We're kind of struggling enough just to keep the main FA Cup going. So, but yeah, so that was a really, really good bit of cup football. And I kind of think it's what the followers of the league needed. That game that you were only half thinking of watching, but you're like, well, it's on and I've finished work, I might as well watch it. And we were all hooked, So there was a really, really good advert for the game over there. The Barté game I didn't see, but I saw the goals. And again, it's that reversal of form thing, So we were talking 2-3 weeks ago about Dynamo Minsk being the crisis club. Well, they're kind of getting through that pretty quickly now. So they had a nice win at Smolovici.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, kind of going back to Slotsk. I mean, they are still top of the table and leading the league in goals scored, but one thing that kind of jumped out to me is that even though they won, they did concede 2 goals to Belshina, and in 5 games before that, Belshina had only scored 3 times in 5 games. And so I would say that would be a concern, the fact that even though they won, they conceded twice to a team that had only scored 3 the whole year before that.
Yeah, but I kind of picked up that Slutsk enjoy a high-scoring game. So that just seems to be the type of team it is. That's how they, they won their first game. I think it was 5-3. They won the game against Isloch, which was a high-scoring game. So that seems to suit them. But they will now play the kind of where are we? The invigorated Dynamo Minsk, who, look a different outfit the last couple of games. That will probably be my pick of the weekend. Dynamo Minsk, they've won 2 in a row and 3 of their last 4. So now they're 3-0-3. So they're also +3, which when I'm looking at the table, even though Dynamo Minsk is in 9th, they're at +3. Bate is +3, and then Slutsk is +4. So, I mean, in terms of goal difference, Dynamo Minsk is right there, tied for second. Yeah, exactly. So I suspect Slutsk could do a reality check, and I think they might get it this weekend. So we'll see about that. Number of things. I talked to you about this kind of weird thing about not knowing where games were going to be played necessarily. And another thing's come up is there was another late reversal of a fixture. I think it's the Smolovici Energetic game that's been switched from the home game to the away game at the last minute. So that's another strange one. But in fact, Isloch are going to play their 7th game of the season, but only their 2nd away game. And I don't know how they work this out, So, it all feeds into the wonderful chaos that is the Belarus League.
It's really, right now we still have 1st through 14th is only separated by 6 points. So, I mean, you could have Slutsk drop their next 2 and Dynamo Brest win their next 2, and then all of a sudden they're pulled up even with each other.
It's all open. It really is so open. And Isloch have got their way into second, which I'm really, really pleased about.
2 in a row.
Yeah, that's a really nice thing. I'm going to get on to talk about one of the Isloch players who actually, he's the midfielder that I mentioned last week who got thrown into the back two to sort of, I think, just to give a bit of pace there. And so he was interviewed and he was comparing the way Isloch play. I thought it was really nice, actually. Comparing them to the way Atalanta have been playing in the kind of Italian league and the Champions League the last year or two, which is just kind of not really worrying too much about accommodating the other team, but just kind of very much being yourself and a kind of philosophy of relentless attacking. And it's really serving them well. So, but I want to pick up on a couple more things he talked about. And it just kind of shows, maybe we've been coming to this with a sort of beggars can't be choosers mentality, because a long time ago, earlier this season, Portsmouth played Harrogate Town away in the FA Cup, and Harrogate play on an artificial pitch. And watching that game, I was just thinking how awful this artificial pitch is, how awful the bounces, what a poor advert that is for having artificial surfaces in the EFL. I was not sold on the idea at all. But since we've been watching the Belarus League, obviously FC Minsk Stadium, which is where FC Minsk and Isloch both play, has an artificial surface. And I kind of got used to watching football on it very quickly. So perhaps that's a bit of...
The club here that's best known for playing at an artificial surface is Atlanta United. And they're really a club that uses it to their advantage. They're a very fast and high-scoring team. And you really, if you look at their home versus road splits, it's something where they really use that carpet to their advantage. So, I mean, there's certain teams that it works for.
Yeah, and I mean, there are, some big advocates of these artificial pitches in England now. I had quite a sort of conversation stroke row on Twitter last year with a guy who promotes these. And he was kind of saying, well, how good should it be? And I said, well, it should really be at the stage where you can't really tell the difference. But he was kind of saying, well, if you say it should be like a grass pitch, or if you're talking about English football, at what stage, a grass pitch at what stage of the season? A grass pitch is completely different in August to what it is in January or whatever. But it seems Sveber was kind of complaining about the artificial pitches, but also complaining about some of the grass ones not being very good.
Yeah, and if you look at the pitch at Rodney Parade, for example,
wow.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's sometimes when, maybe the plastic pitch would be better. And I mean, Rodney Parade is probably an extreme example, but certainly you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Actually, if I can word for word quote the sort of Google Translate that I've got on this article, so it's not quite correct, but I just really love what he says, so I'm just going to say it the same way. Okay. Sveber says, the legs get clogged, especially in the summer. It burns the soles. You can't go to a good English tackle on a dry artificial field. And I just love the fact that a Russian playing in Belarus really wants to put in a good English tackle and can't because of the artificial pitch. So, and in fact, he was talking about, he went with the under-17 team, something of Lokomotiv Moscow, to play at one of the kind of League One or League Two teams in England, and was saying how impressed he was with it there. So clearly we've made an impression.
I'll tell you what I'll do here. I guess I'm going to need a volunteer, but the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are the Major League Baseball team here in Phoenix, they recently replaced their natural grass with an artificial turf field that is supposed to be the state-of-the-art, best of the best, closest thing to real grass. So I'm going to need a volunteer, but whenever they open things back up and I can make it down to a stadium tour, I'm going to need to try out a good English tackle on somebody at the Arizona Diamondbacks, and then I'll get back to you and let you know how it went. I'm going to need a volunteer to let me try out a good English tackle on. So
yeah, okay, so that's the gold standard then, I think.
yeah.
So, I kind of thought of you because the Neyman they got back to winning ways last week, and on the highlights program, they were described as the phoenix of the round, which I quite liked. So, yeah, the only other thing Sveber said is he said the same thing we've said, which is the number of penalties being given in that league is crazy, and nobody seems to quite know why. So, but at least we don't have to wait, 2 minutes for them to be given or not given. So, I figure it's okay. I can live with it.
This is what I always have a hard time with pronouncing. Gorodia, they had lost 3 in a row, or excuse me, they had won 3 in a row, and they dropped their match. They're still in 6, but they're -2 in goal difference. So, do you think they're a contender or a pretender, as we say over here?
Pretender, probably. I mean, Gorodea, to be honest, to me, that they are like Slavia 3 weeks ago. So the way I figure it, what goes around is going to come around, and then some other team. I mean, look at Energetic. They were firing on all cylinders, and you wouldn't know it now.
Yeah.
So it's just a crazy league, and I'm like, who's gonna push through in the next couple of weeks? And I really, really, I think there's a lot of gamblers. I mean, a lot of people who've set up these English language Twitter accounts for Belarus. We're getting kind of annoyed because we're getting swarms of interest from gamblers. But I think if they really want to put a punt on who's going to win the league this season, it's a tough call at the moment.
I don't think anybody's separated. I mean, I think that's very clear. I mean, it's a toss-up. It really, I mean, it just doesn't seem like a very good league to bet on at all right now. It doesn't seem like there's any sure things. Every time you say energetic, I think that it should be like the name of an energy drink. It's like let's go have an energetic and vodka and go ride some tractors.
Yeah, exactly. They're just following Red Bull's example.
There we go. They need like something other than a bull, like maybe like a moose or something like that. It's in Belarus, and you have a red energetic moose and so an energy drink company.
There you go.
And as Aaron Ayers, one of our co-hosts, says, we have digressed.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose the last thing I want to chuck in is this amazing kind of crusade now to get merchandise, because there isn't really such a strong culture of getting your replica shirts and having your online stores. And it's probably progressed a little bit since I was in Minsk in 2006. And I was walking past the Dynamo Stadium and walked past what appeared to be the Dynamo Minsk shop. Walked in, they were using it to sell baby clothes. I think there was one rather sad-looking Dynamo Minsk training jacket, and that's basically all you could get. So I think it's progressed a little bit since then, but there's this massive crusade at the moment to get replica shirts and things. Some people have got them from Dynamo Brest. Other people have bought kind of vintage ones that were around. The Torpedo, I'm really, really impressed with what they did. Basically, the English-based fans figured out that they can be made here in England as long as they've got the permission to get the badge from the club. The club signed off this permission in this document that's all in Russian, with the official stamp on it, as everything has to have out there. And so they're getting Torpedo Jodino shirts made here in the UK, awesome. Which is amazing. Yeah, I am promised an Isloch away shirt. I don't know if you've ever heard.
I'd like to get one myself if there's a way that I can. Let me know how I can maybe.
I will. I'll message you later. I don't know if you've ever heard the famous people who are a little bit older than me and football fans tend to know a 1980s song by Half Man, Half Biscuit. called All I Want for Christmas is a Dukla Prague away kit. Okay. I just slightly modified that. All I Want for Christmas is an Isloch Minsky Rayon away kit. So I'm still waiting on that. I'm told it's coming.
I love it.
We live in hope.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of a kit collector myself. I always say that I'm probably the only person in Phoenix with a Loughborough Dynamo shirt.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't that many people in Loughborough with one, I'd have thought. But
up the most.
I've kind of fallen back in love with football shirts for the reason that it's the only kind of item of clothing I wear that my wife doesn't decide. So it's my chance to rebel, you know.
Yeah, I think that there's just so much history in the shirts, and it's something that, you know, there's a story behind it. Okay, you know, this club wore this shirt this year, and you know, this is what happened, and got relegated. And
I think for a lot of us, you know, when we look in our cupboard or wardrobe in a few years, and let's be honest, looking back at a fairly grim time, and then getting that Isloch or Torpedo or Dynamo Brest shirt out of the cupboard and thinking, do you know what, that was kind of fun. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I've told this on the show before, but I haven't told this story here on any of the Belarus episodes, and I so commonly bring up Loughborough Dynamo because they're one of my teams. But do you know how their kit originated?
No.
Apparently, it was in 1959 when the Wolves were doing their kind of tour of England, where they were playing clubs from Eastern Europe that came over. And it was actually Dynamo Moscow that came over to play a friendly match with the Wolves, and I believe it took place somewhere in Birmingham. And I guess that there was this group of high school students from Loughborough who attended that game, and when they came back, they decided to take the name of Dynamo Moscow and the black and gold colors of the Wolves and founded Loughborough Dynamo with the Dynamo name taken from Dynamo Moscow and the black and gold colors taken from Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah, because they've also got that distinctive D logo, which you see on all the Dynamo teams. So Dynamo Kiev, Minsk, Brest, Tbilisi, I can never say it right, Moscow, they've all got that little D thing going on, so it's quite nice to see. Unfortunately, I missed out on seeing them this season because I was all ready to go to see Loughborough away to Carlton Town, which is here in Nottingham. And it was called off because of bad weather. And of course, that game will now never be played. So, c'est la vie.
I mean, it's a bad situation all around for non-league. I just hope that these clubs can survive, because I mean, a club like Loughborough, you're talking about, if they get in 300, that's a big day for them.
Yeah, we're all missing it, but yeah, Belarus is keeping us going. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a lot of fun just being able to talk about some football that's actually happening. So
exactly, and to get back to this cup game, I mean, that's the kind of amazing thing. Like, we're not watching a rerun here; we're watching actual drama that's going on somewhere with real. I mean, the local commentators, if you watch the highlights, they really made it. You don't have to understand a word to kind of pick up the vibe. It was just great.
Yeah, I think that's a lot when you listen to Spanish language commentary over here, that even though I don't necessarily understand what the announcers are saying, there's so much more passion than English or U.S. announcers have. I mean, you just don't have a U.S. or an English announcer screaming goal at the top of their lungs for, what seems like 5 minutes straight.
Yeah, I mean, we've had one or two that have tried in England, but it hasn't really gone down well.
I'll have to see if I can find that on YouTube.
Yeah, the big one to look out for is Dynamo Minsk against Slutsk. I'm obviously hoping Isloch could sneak top spot in the league away to Shakhtar, but Shakhtar are on form. But I think it's just, another unpredictable round of games to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean that tells you right there that how tight things are when you're saying hopefully Isloch can beat Shakhtar, and you're talking about Isloch in second and Shakhtar in 11th. So I mean that tells you, and those two are only separated by 4 points, and right now so we're through 6 match weeks. And Slutsk and Isloch are the only clubs that have won 4 matches. So, I mean, that tells you, everybody has left the stadium disappointed at least 33% of the time. So, I mean, it's just anything goes. And even, like we talked about Belarusian putting in 2 goals on Slutsk last week. And, they're probably the worst team in the league. And at least by numbers and form.
Yeah. I'm not sure I want Isloch to win the league, I mean, I kind of went for them as the unfashionable team. So I hope they do well, but not that well. But I think being top for a week or two would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's always fun. But, you have to think that eventually some of the big money teams, your Dynamo Minsk or your Bates we're going to come to the top eventually.
I think so.
Well, Jonathan, it's been a pleasure as always, and we'll do this again around the same time next week.
Yeah, for me too. All right. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.